Welcome, everyone, to Buddhist Center. It's so wonderful to be here with you tonight. Normally, we start with a large introduction that's long. We talk about the equanimity and we talk about the different types of beings, and we talk about the various steps that we usually do in order to develop a mind where we would want to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. But because we've go through that so many times and have gone through that so many times, this evening, we're going to do an abbreviated version of it and then just start with the introductory prayers. When Khenso Geshe Wandak Rinpoche taught, he always started right away with the Heart Sutra. And then I asked him at the end of his life if he thought that it was better to do that or to begin with setting a very intense, proper motivation. And he said, you'll have to see what's best for you or what you think is best. It's really up to you. So we've done it the way that we've done it for some time. And now this evening, we're going to try it a little bit of a different way. So let's just begin with setting a proper motivation, a mind that's beautiful, a mind that wishes to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, utilizing all of the things we've been talking about equanimity and about the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And that we'll be talking about again tonight. And then later we'll be talking about the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice for generating the mind that aspires to enlightenment. But right now, use all of those tools that we've gone over time and time again that show us how we could generate this beautiful mind. And do this to the best of your ability. Invite all sentient beings, beginning with those closest to you, and then moving out towards strangers, and then towards those who are difficult, and then all other sentient beings. Please invite them here to be your guest. And I'll recite the following verses from the King of Aspirations prayers. In the language of gods, nagas, and yakshas, in the language of demons and of humans too, and however many kinds of speech there may be, I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. So now that we've heard those auspicious verses and in our minds, we've invited all sentient beings here to be our guests, to be able to hear these teachings, to be able to hear how to get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. Now imagine that we're all experiencing the merit field filling in the space in front of us, all the incredible masters, Buddha Shakyamuni, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, our root lamas, such as Khenso Geshe Wandak Rinpoche and Geshe Lobsang Gompo Rinpoche and Geshe Dorje Damdu Rinpoche and Umzala Geshe Aga Rinpoche, Jeffrey Hopkins Rinpoche, all of these holy beings that you can think of, holy beings in the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya, holy beings Lord Maitreya, holy beings in the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Arya Manjushri and Arya Nagarjuna. Holy beings in the profound blessings lineage passed down from Lord Vajradhara to masters like Saraha. All of these incredible enlightened beings in the space in front of you, in the Nalanda tradition, in the Tibetan tradition, and all the holy 35 Buddhas and the protector beings. Imagine that they're all in the space in front of you, looking into your eyes with immense loving kindness, and they know exactly what it is that you need, because all we all want is to be free from suffering and have a state of happiness that's lasting. And the Buddhas come to this world in order to show us exactly how to get what we want. So imagine those kinds of beings with no ulterior motives, that only have motives to help us, are all in the space in front of us, looking into our eyes in the same way that many of us have experienced from our own personal root lamas. And just rejoice in the fact that we get this experience. Now, you and all sentient beings who are witnessing this miracle of enlightened beings in the space in front of you, now imagine that this miracle transforms into Vulture Peak Mountain, transforms into the place where Buddha Shakyamuni turned the wheel of Dharma, the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, and taught the definitive point that all phenomena are empty of inherent existence. And hidden within that showed that there are these 5 paths that one would go through as a bodhisattva in order to get closer and closer to a place where one could understand completely, simultaneously, have the knowledge of reality and diversity, as well as this perfect caring for others, these qualities that the Buddha has. We can evolve our minds in the same way that the Buddhas evolved their minds, because their minds were just like ours. So this being said, Now we'll recite the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Many times it's recited before a teaching begins because it's said that the Heart Sutra removes obstacles. So any obstacles that could get in the way of us successfully completing this teaching, get in the way of us not being able to hear this in the best way that we possibly personally can. Because this is about, from your perspective, this is about you. From my perspective, this is about me. We evolve our own individual minds. No one can do it for us. I can't do it for you. You can't do it for me. But I can share with you techniques that were shared with me that I've applied to my mind and found some success with, that you could check out for yourself and see if you could discover something within that of value. So with that being said, let's imagine that we're in this space, all sentient beings are with us, and then we're at Vulture Peak Mountain, and Buddha Shakyamuni is there, Chenrezig is there, Shariputra is there, and all these other holy beings that we mentioned are all in this space in front of us. And we begin now reciting this Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard. Once, the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way. Seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable true complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Te ata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. So it's so important for us to always remember when we read the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge that the Buddha is not negating the existence of things. The Buddha is negating the inherent existence of things, an inherently existent form. When you look for an inherently existent form, this won't be able to be found. If you look everywhere, then an inherently existent form. This is a really specific kind of form we're talking about, something that stands on its own, from its own side, right within the object, something that doesn't require doesn't require subjectivity. We're looking for something from the object's own side. And when we look for that kind of form, we're not able to find it. There's a non-finding of the kind of form that would be able to hold itself up, that would be able to stand up on its own, from its own side, separate from mere imputation, something separate that would be able to be found. And when you subject form to ultimate analysis, you come to the conclusion that there is no inherently existent form, because ultimate analysis isn't looking for the existence of form. It's looking for a specific kind of form, a kind of form that inherently exists. So this is what we're talking about here when we say there's no form. We mean that the object of negation, when we talk about emptiness, is so, so important. The object of negation isn't the form itself. The object of negation is a specific kind of form that has a mode of existence that we'll come to find out is impossible, inherent existence. And it's through the kind of reasonings of the four types of production and the reasonings of the different keys and so forth, and the four essentials and the 7-point analysis of the chariot, that we can then apply these things in their proper places, whether we're looking at self or phenomena. We can apply these reasonings of dependent origination to chip away at this misapprehension that the Buddha says that we've been having since beginningless time. We've been misapprehending things in a way where we think that they have a nature, they have a way about them that they just don't have. They don't have any kind of hint, even at the level of a particle, from their own side of the thing that we think that they have naturally when we just experience them in our world. So the Buddha came to tell us that the problem that we're having, because we all show up here with some sort of a problem. We want to understand something more. We don't understand why, we have to suffer, etc. There's a solution, and there's a really specific solution. The Buddha says to all of our problems, the problems that we come to Buddhism to solve. The Buddha said there's one solution that will fix everything, and that's changing the distorted way that you look at things, changing, through analysis, your idea about your whole reality, the self of person, self of phenomena, yourself, someone else, that falls self of person, and then self of phenomena, everything other than person. We think all the stuff there is that we can interact with or think about is inherently existent in some way. And we don't even notice that we think that until we stop for a moment and see how we're thinking. Because the Buddha said that this is the key to our happiness and freedom from suffering forever, and for everyone's key to happiness and freedom from suffering forever. So the key is to figure out, well, wait a second. If Buddha said things are not actually the way they're appearing to me, that there's a problem with the appearances in reality. There's some sort of conflict that's going on, the Buddha said. And the Buddha said that I'm not noticing that conflict, and I'm superimposing something onto everything in my world that isn't there, and that's inherent existence. And from that, I create a concreteness about myself, about you, about that chair, about the form in the Heart Sutra. I create a concreteness that I feel then is suitable to be valued as something pleasing, pleasant or unpleasant. And then based on this determination, I'm either pulled towards an object if I find it pleasant and I'm attached to it, or I push away from things that I find unpleasant because I have aversion towards them. And then this is what's going on when we look at the discrimination of sentient beings, when we look at these labels that we put on beings, when we do the equanimity meditation. Babunka Rinpoche says that we should, a lot of times when they say the equanimity meditation, you think of, neutrals, and then you think of friends and see your reactions to each of those. But Babunka Rinpoche says, put all of those stars on a stage in front of you. Put an example of each of those stars on a stage in front of you and just watch your reaction to that stage. Watch how your mind reacts and creates this bias of push and pull towards the varying types of beings that you're talking about. And, you know, this is what we're trying to fix. We're trying to fix the way that we think about things so that we could be happier. So this is something that's going on when we're looking at the 7-point cause and effect and we're looking at equanimity, because we see beings as inherently existent, because I see that's an inherently existent stranger. So I don't really care as much if their house is on fire as if my best friend's house is on fire. And that's an inherently existent enemy or someone I find difficult. And I actually kind of feel like they got what they had coming about that kind of person, because I feel they inherently exist as an enemy. They have some static, concrete status when that doesn't even make sense or tally with the way that things just shift around in our lives. Friends become enemies, enemies become friends, strangers become friends, strangers become enemies. We see this shifting all the time. Just like we don't even need to talk about emptiness, just talk about impermanence. And you see the shifting. And the reason that we're missing all of it is because we're grasping at things as being inherently existent, and it's creating an inappropriate attention around things that then is leading us to be attached or have aversion or be neutral, and then leading us into actions and leading us into more and more samsara. So it's so important that we get the point what the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge is, and it's that the objective, the kind of mode of existence of phenomena is empty of inherent existence. But things exist. So this is the important part that we have to say when we go back to what I originally said and we say we were looking for a specific thing. Ultimate analysis is not trying to prove whether things exist or not. Ultimate analysis is trying to see whether they exist in a way that appears to us and we apprehend. That's the ultimate analysis is doing. It has no business declaring whether a flower exists or not. It only can declare whether the object inherently exists. And that realization that occurs when you see emptiness directly doesn't imply anything else, according to the great masters. It merely negates the object of negation. Nothing else is implied. It's a non-affirming negative. It is not an affirming negative that tells you something else about the object. It doesn't tell you the object, hey, the object really subjectively exists. It doesn't, all it tells you is it doesn't objectively exist. And when you come out of ultimate analysis and you still have the experience of the world around you, you have to come to some sort of a conclusion that if things exist, which they do, because I'm talking to you right now, then, and they don't exist inherently or objectively, there must be another way that they are existing. And they're existing by convention. They're existing conventionally, subjectively, subjective conventionality. Mere imputation and dependence upon a collection that serves as a basis of designation. A mere imputation, a cup, in dependence upon a collection, parts, clay, a whole bunch of stuff coming together. All this, there's a collection here that's serving as a basis of designation. But there is no designated object that exists intrinsically within the basis of designation. So the conclusion yogi would come to is that this cup, if it doesn't inherently exist, but I can still use it and drink out of it. Yes, conventional reality still works. I can still use it and drink out of it. If its mode of existence is an objective existence or objective, right within the object kind of existence or establishment, but it's still here. The only other option is subjective. If we're saying that the basis of designation has nothing established by way of its own character from its own side that can jump up at me and say that this is cup. There is nothing from the object side inherently, and that sounds screwy. And that's why it takes so long to start to understand how this could even be possibly true. But you start to see science and physics undoing kind of our idea and concept of the world around us. They just are not getting to the point where it allows for even their findings to have this empty subjectivity within their sphere of finding. Or their findings sound peculiarly like mind-only school Yogacara findings. And their findings aren't for the sake of stopping samsara. So that plays a role in it too. So it really, it's kind of a whole picture that we have to look at. So I just wanted to add this to the Heart Sutra points within it for anybody who's new, to just kind of get a grasp on that the Buddha is not like out there saying nothing exists. And the Buddha is not saying that like, hey, like I'll like, if you can get to this place where you know nothing exists, then you'll be happy too. And many people misinterpreted the Buddha over the years and thought, empty your mind, get rid of the objects, get rid of the conception. There's no good conception. And we know there are conceptual states that tally with reality. There's inferential cognitions of emptiness. The object of negation, the thing, the non-finding is the same non-finding. There's not like you get, you're not directly seeing it. You're seeing it through, the use of a generic image. So it's mistaken still. But that mistaken part isn't mistaken in regards to the fact. The inferential valid cognition they say that you have, and for instance, on the path of preparation, when you have a union of calm abiding and special insight, and for a dull, regular old bodhisattva, that inferential cognition of emptiness, the object of the focal, the object of observation, emptiness of inherent existence, or the aspect of whatever you're analyzing that you come to the conclusion of. So the focal object, for instance, being this cup, and the aspect being empty of inherent existence. The emptiness of inherent existence, the non-finding that you realize at the path of preparation, is the same aspect that you're not finding. There's just duality still there because it's being seen through a generic image. It's not being recognized directly. The mind isn't experiencing emptiness as if water is poured in water. The mind is experiencing emptiness through the use of a generic image at that point. But the generic image is the same kind of emptiness of the object of negation as the emptiness of the object of negation that you see directly. So this is a very important point. There's not a different kind of emptiness you see directly than you realize conceptually in terms of the emptiness of the object of negation. So the emptiness of inherent existence. It's the same fact that you will, your calm abiding will get really good, and your analysis will get really good, and you'll have this calm abiding, and your analysis then will kind of turn it on to another level where there's this union of calm abiding and special insight. And when that occurs, the realization is of the same emptiness of the object of negation. So it's just important to understand that one's conceptual but correct, but mistaken because the mind is going through a generic image, not directly seeing it. And any conceptual mind is necessarily mistaken because it mixes with a generic image to apprehend the object instead of apprehending it directly. So I like to talk about some stuff That's what I wanted to talk about. And now let's do the next part. Kala jibe nejo damba nengushe du junga yi du do jenju baba lama yi bu shinzi nezungandro zo la cha zelo agazamara jajandra zamara ebegazamara. Aga samara dajadara zamara yabe de adonga de gade baragati parasangati buddhizo baba gonju zonji gaid yoji she lobo doji mebo doji shewa doji dagi baje mede bejen danji shedin kori zo ha kerin danja jeju shewa da midun bejen danda wa dan damba janjin bonzon zonjoji dashi je janden da de lejo. Outer mandala offering. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas High, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I go for refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Thank you so much, everyone. Great to be with you tonight. Great to be here talking about the stages of the path to enlightenment. So why don't we begin by reading this beautiful poem by Lama Tsongkhapa that we've been going over week after week, year after year. The Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche was so kind to teach us multiple times. And it's the source of all my good by Lama Tsongkhapa, or the foundation of all good qualities, that shows us stage by stage exactly what we need to do in order to become a Buddha. Inside these 14 stanzas. It's so short. It's incredible that it's actually that short. We find everything contained in the Lamrim Chemo, the Ngarim Chemo, all of those commentaries. We're so blessed to be able to have so many commentaries in our world on the Lamrim Chemo, on Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, to help us elucidate the meanings of these great, incredible teachings that were passed down through first Buddha Shakyamuni, through the Nalanda tradition, and then through all the Kadampa masters, old Kadampa masters, and then the incredible schools we find within Tibetan Buddhism. We're all searching out one thing, and that's Buddhahood. That's a way to get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience that keep us from experiencing all that we want. And that's no suffering, zero suffering, and only happiness. And we try every day in our mixed up ways to make that happen. But unfortunately, we don't have the recipe to make that happen. We actually have the recipe that starts with that mistake that I talked about. And if the recipe started with a huge mistake, like you're trying to make a cake and you have to add a teaspoon of salt, and the recipe says start with 2 cups of salt, the cake isn't going to work. It's not gonna be the cake that you were looking for. So luckily, we can produce the results that we're looking for in dependence upon flawless instructions, as opposed to starting with flaw that we start with, starting with bias that we start with. And those starting points only bring us suffering. These starting points only bring us happiness of the higher realms, bring us happiness of being free from cyclic existence altogether, bring us the happiness of complete Buddhahood, if we look at it in terms of the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity that show us how to have higher realm rebirth, teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity that show us how to be free from cyclic existence altogether, and the teachings for beings of great capacity that show us how exactly to become a Buddha. And all of them are necessary as foundations for one another, the small for the medium, and the small and medium for the great, uh, to be able to become Buddhas, to be able to achieve that goal where we have fulfilled all of our needs and all of sentient beings' needs. So let's listen to what those steps might be. We've gone over them a lot. Hopefully, as I read each stanza, you can fill in just tons of details into each of the stanzas that you've plucked out of the various teachings and the meanings and the oral tradition and the written tradition. And hopefully it'll be very meaningful to you. You know, we first hear the words, as Geshe Dorje Damdula says, then we think about, invoke the meaning, and then we have associated experiences. And those associated experiences start to come when we meditate, and we have a lot of information to change our discrimination about things with. The source of all my good. The source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow him with all my strength and reverence. Bless me first to realize that the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I've died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrongs of the many wrongs we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. Bless me to receive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life. I can never get enough of them. They cannot be trusted. They are the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of freedom. Grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and to recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of morality the essence of my practice. They are the root of Buddha's teaching. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, every one my own mother, has fallen into. Grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. Grant me to see clearly that the wish itself is not enough, for if I am not well trained in the three moralities, I cannot become a Buddha. Grant me then a fierce resolve to master the Bodhisattva vows. Grant that I may quickly gain the path where quietude and insight join together, one which quiets my mind from being distracted to wrong objects, the other which analyzes the perfect meaning in the correct way. Grant that once I've practiced well the path shared and become a vessel that is worthy, I enter with perfect ease the way of the diamond, highest of all ways, holiest door to come inside for the fortunate and good. Bless me to know with genuine certainty that when I've entered thus, the cause that gives me both the attainments is to keep my pledges and my vows most pure. Grant me then always to keep them, even if it costs my life. Bless me next to realize, as well as I can, the crucial points of both the steps, the essence of the secret ways. Grant me then to practice as the holy ones have spoken, putting all my effort in and never leaving off the practice of the 4 times highest that there is. Bless me, grant me that the spiritual friend who shows me this good road and all my true companions in this quest live long and fruitful lives. Bless and grant me that the rain of obstacles, things within me or outside me, that could stop me now, stop and end forever. In all my lives, may I never live apart from my perfect lamas. May I bask in the glory of the Dharma. May I fulfill perfectly every good quality of every level and path, and reach then quickly the place where I become myself, the one who holds the diamond. Okay, so we have been looking at the section. We're now at the section on the great scope. We've gone over the teaching shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity, and we've seen that all of those things are completely necessary for us to realize the great scope. And in the great scope section of the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, Lama Tsongkhapa keeps sending us back to the earlier sections to really make sure that we have the correct foundations in order to be able to move forward. Make sure that we have the foundations of this idea of the uncertainty of cyclic existence in order for us to do the meditation properly on equanimity, in order for us to get past these exaggerated ways of looking at others that disallow us to be able to work for all sentient beings, that keep us from being able to practice the 7-point cause and effect proper. That precept of equanimity is so crucial, because when we have attachment, which is what we bring in to the, with us when we talk about friends and loved ones, when we have attachment, we're exaggerating the quality of the thing, and it's making us just drag ourselves to it. It's pulling us towards it. We're running towards it, if you will. I'd rather say that we're running towards what we think is there, pulling us. And then with aversion, we're exaggerating the quality. Think about the exaggeration we do. Oh, this is my best friend. Oh, I can't stand them. Like 2 weeks later, happens all the time in cyclic existence, and you know that it does. You exaggerate. This is the worst. This is the best. And that kind of exaggeration doesn't work out if we don't tame it. And that's what the equanimity step, it's taming that exaggeration. So we would have an equal willingness to help all sentient beings, because we recognize these relationships that we've had. And if we want to help one, we should want to help them all, because they've all have these equaling, varying types of relationships with us. And they've had these varying types of relationships with us since beginningless time. And we're discriminating each of these beings in relation to this life alone. We're not looking at them in terms of the broader picture. So we're looking at things real small. And we'll get into the reading tonight or tomorrow or next time, which will show us more about that. But it's all about stopping our exaggeration. And where is all of this exaggeration coming from? It's coming from self-grasping ignorance. We think there's an object that exists from its own side that is valuable, that or invaluable, or that should be exaggerated as bad or really good. And this is how it works. And this is what we do with cups, and we do with people. We do with best friends that become enemies, and enemies that become best friends. It's really, when we take a look at what we're doing, we're not engaging if we convince ourselves of beginningless lives, which we're going to do throughout the course of this talk. It's really interesting when you look at the commentaries on the first step, recognizing sentient beings are your mother. It's more of a teaching on beginningless lives. It's, they're saying, like, if you don't have this thing down that you should have already had down, because, we've been working on this idea that you've been, since beginningless time, been grasping at things as having inherent existence, and this has caused all of these problems over and over and over again. But what a lot of the Lamrim masters are saying once you get here is you better really get the fact that you have beginningless lives, because that's going to be crucial for you to say you've had these mothers time and time again, and everybody's been your mother, father, brother, sister, cousin, aunt, roommate. Every single sentient being has had this relationship with you. You will not be able to make logical sense out of any of that if you can't logically posit that you've had this consciousness that came from previous consciousness that you don't find a beginning to, and that can't be destroyed at death. Physical body can be destroyed, but the mind is not a physical substance. It's a mental substance. It's not a form. It's not something that can just be destroyed. It's something that moment by moment moves forward. The moments are destroyed. This moment ceases, and then this moment arises. But the continuum itself has never not been there and will never not be. So the continuum itself is a clear and knowing agent. The consciousness is a clear and knowing agent that has clearly known a bunch of stuff. And it's clearly known in my previous life that maybe my mother was a cow, right? And she, took care of me in that kind of way. Um, so it's a broader picture that we have to be really, really willing to look at. And if we aren't willing to look at this idea of beginningless lives, this meditation won't work. If we can't establish previous rebirth, this meditation is not going to have any power. You can get what the points are pretty quickly, but to really have it a meditation that changes your mind, it really has an effect. You have to establish previous rebirths, and we'll show why that is throughout the course of this discussion about this step. So let's first turn to Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. Of course, this beautiful translation done by the Lamrim Translation Committee, editor-in-chief Josh Cutler, and assistant other editor was Guy Newland, who's just an incredibly nice individual. And we're lucky to have folks like him helping us to understand the Dharma. So we went over the precept of equanimity, and I saw some other stuff I wanted to read about equanimity, but I think that we read enough about it that it's fine. And it's in order for us to really, really achieve this incredible goal we talk about, Buddhahood, we have to start making our mind incredible. So the way we make our mind incredible is to start to change the way that it thinks about stuff, and then make it think more incredibly. Make it think bigger instead of so small. The way we're so hooked on small. We should get hooked on bigger ways of thinking. Bigger ways of thinking are more peaceful. You would think that all of this philosophy and jargon just makes your mind so busy. But actually, all of this philosophy, if you're really utilizing it for what it's meant for, and that's to end your suffering, and you're meditating on these things, it creates a peace of mind that you couldn't have without the philosophy. So this is just something to understand about these teachings. These teachings aren't to just get a busy mind and know a bunch of stuff. These teachings are to know the things that we need to know we've never known. And why do we need to know those things we've never known? Because the things that we've always wanted and never gotten have not been gotten because of the things that we never knew. So here we go. Step 1 of the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya and Master Asanga, and so forth in the extensive deeds lineage. And we're going to hear from Asanga in a moment. From Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise, cultivating a recognition that all beings are your mothers, not have been. See, this is the discrimination that you need to change. Have been, oh yeah, back there they were. But if you look at it in terms of a continuum, the I was a previous I was an I, and I had a mother. It's an I. The I that's here now it's not a new continuum. It's not a new mere designation. It's just an I designated on different parts that's named something different in terms of like Bill or Bob or Laura or Janine, different names, but the actual continuum is the same continuum. And those names, who are you talking about? If you said, I'm talking about Jeff. Who's Jeff? I am. So it's just the I that's existed since beginningless time. Because we're going to get more proofs on this, so I'll read it. Because cyclic existence is beginningless, your births are also without beginning. Therefore, you have died and been reborn time and time again. There's absolutely no kind of body which you have not assumed in cyclic existence. There is absolutely no place where you have not been born, and there is no person who has not been a relative, such as your mother. So here we'll learn also from His Holiness's kind of commentary, you can use any being, whatever the being that comes to your mind that you find just took care of you and put their needs aside and would do anything for you when you were vulnerable and needed them. Whatever being you feel that kind of relation to, use that being. This is about changing our mind and using what the most effective medicine for our mind is. And you'll see that where the quotes come from that allow us to come to these kind of conclusions within the 7-point cause and effect, where these points come from trace all the way back to Buddha. But we're so fortunate these enlightened masters were able to come through the Nalanda tradition and the Tibetan tradition to be able to expand upon quotes that wouldn't necessarily drive us to the place where we end up generating bodhicitta, because we wouldn't necessarily know how to create the cognitive causes for each of the results required to bring about the final result of the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, which is bodhicitta, the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So here we see in Asanga's levels of yogic deeds, and it says Asanga cites a sutra, and it looks very similar to what we would find in the Lankavatara Sutra. I think maybe in the 8th chapter. We'll take a look at that. So let's read this and then we'll see. We'll see what you think. See if you think that's where Asanga is getting his info from. I'm sure you can find exactly where it's cited if you're an incredible Nalanda scholar and where Asanga is citing it from this sutra. But it looks like the descent into the Lanka Sutra. It says it cites a sutra as follows. And so we'll see what you think. I have difficulty seeing a place wherein you have not been born, gone to, or died in the distant past. I have difficulty seeing any person in the distant past who has not been your father, mother, aunt, uncle, sister, master, abbot, guru, or someone like a guru. Moreover, all beings have not only previously been your mothers, but will also be your mothers in future light and in the future a limitless number of times. Reflect upon this and become convinced that all beings have been your mothers. Once you develop this conviction, you will then easily remember their kindness and so forth. If you do not develop it, you will have no basis for remembering their kindness. So straight up, Lama Tsongkhapa is showing us here, step by step, if you don't have equanimity and you still have bias, you have no basis for cultivating recognition, cultivating remembrance of kindness, cultivating a wish to repay kindness, love through the force of attraction, great compassion. All of these steps become necessary within this process to realize the next step. And it's obvious when you look at what the steps actually are. So let's take a peek at that sutra, the descent into the Lanka Sutra, the Lankavatara Sutra. And this is actually where you find a huge point about not eating meat. And it becomes so obvious that this is what the Buddha is talking about bodhisattvas, abstaining from this practice. And it's interesting that the Buddha actually uses supply and demand to show that you're actually killing because ordering to be killed. Butchers are killing because there's a demand for this meat. So it's just like killing. So Buddha creates these ideas because we know that killing can be killing a being or ordering it to be killed. So the Buddha makes a case about supply and demand in this sutra, which we won't really get into, but I found it to be really, really amazing that we see these kind of ideas. And then, and it actually also says that later on, people will start justifying using scriptures eating meat. And I'll leave that one for you to think about where you may have heard that. But anyway, I'd like to just read a little bit from here and just show you the flavor. So we saw Asanga's text, and Asanga, we said, again, the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya and then to Asanga, and this is where we have the 7-point cause and effect springing from. And then, but we don't say the Nalanda tradition just made up their tradition. That's all right from Buddha Shakyamuni. So it's always good if we can see the sourcing from the sutra and then see how, oh, I see why we needed a commentary. And for me to get these seven, 6 steps in one result to have the result to happen, I see why just from quotes like this, it's going to be hard. And it's mentioned once we get to Pabunka Rinpoche's section on this, it's mentioned how, just getting it from a quote, getting bodhicitta out of a quote is going to be really hard. You can look at quotes about the 4 types of production: not arisen from self, not arisen from other, not arisen from both, not arisen causelessly, or the 4 essentials of establishing the object of negation. Things are not intrinsically one with their parts, intrinsically separate from their parts. If they're not the entailment of emptiness, if things aren't intrinsically one with their parts or intrinsically separate from their parts, they're necessarily not intrinsically existent. You can come up with these very strict conclusions, especially with the help of masters like Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti and Buddhapalita and Aryadeva and Chandrarashita and so forth. You can really work your way through this reasoning that comes up with, you're only looking for this one concrete non-finding. If that makes any sense. I don't know if you could have a concrete non-finding. So you're really just establishing an object of negation and showing that all phenomena, the self of person and phenomena, share this quality of being empty of inherent existence. Every entity has this dual conventional truth and ultimate truth, every single entity. And we're just putting something onto that entity over there that doesn't exist. And we just got to figure that out through repetition and through reasoning and through analysis. But bodhicitta becomes a little bit different. We have to use a lot of kinds of flexibility in our own lives, in the supermarket and walking down the street and seeing someone and smiling at them versus just keeping our head down. We have to take our bodhicitta practice and our reasoning into all of these different circumstances. And it's interesting how emptiness then plays a role in seeing people who are suffering, who don't understand, what this other part of aspect of the ultimate truth is, in dependence upon these ultimate analysis that only establishes a non-finding, a non-affirming negative. So bodhicitta is something we need a lot of different material, just like emptiness. But then we have to see how to flexibly use that material within our day to deal with the kinds of beings that we interact with, those that we consider our friends. Are we exaggerating that? Those that we consider our enemies. Are we exaggerating that? Those that are strangers. Are we exaggerating the fact that we should just throw them out since they were our mother? So this is where we start to become mentally transformed in terms of the ripening paths, because we need both the liberating paths and ripening paths. Without the ripening paths, without changing those ways of exaggeration and discrimination that keep us from caring for others in a complete way, we'll never, ever be able to see emptiness as a bodhisattva. We'll never, if we don't understand death and impermanence, have removed enough kind of rocks out of the road to get to seeing emptiness. So all of these things are necessary as foundations. So here Buddha is talking with Mahamati in this particular sutra. Descent into the Lanka Sutra is a big mind-only school sutra, Yogacara school sutra. I don't really have a lot more to say about it, and we'll just read. So there's a conversation going on. We're going to enter into this mid-conversation, and it's basically about eating meat, not eating meat, etc. Certainly, so the Bhagavan, then listen well, reflect well within yourself, and I'll tell you. So the Bhagavan, the Buddha, that's the Bhagavan, is going to respond to this kind of inquiry that Mahamati has about eating meat, eating flesh, etc., etc. Certainly, the Bhagavan said to Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and gave ear to the Bhagavan. So the Bhagavan says, hey, listen, listen well, We always talk about the faults of the 3 pots. Well, the Buddha is saying, listen well. Well, what would not listening well be like? Oh, if you had an overturned pot and you weren't listening at all, or if you had a pot with a hole in it and you were kind of listening, but it's seeping out. or you have a pot that's full of messy, poisonous, dirty substances that's polluting it. And that's just your mind going, I know this, or I know that, or, well, what about this? And, doing that while the teaching's going on and corrupting it. And all of those ways are not ways to listen well and reflect well. You won't have anything to reflect well on if you don't listen well. And that's why when we look at the wisdom arisen from hearing, the wisdom arisen from analysis, and the wisdom arisen from meditation, you don't hear it well, you won't analyze it well. You won't analyze it well, you will not apply it into your daily life and meditation. It's not possible. The Bhagavan said this to him. For innumerable reasons, Mahamati, the bodhisattva whose nature is compassion, is not to eat any meat. I will explain them. Mahamati, in this long course of transmigration that here, there is not one living being that, having assumed the form of a living being, has not been your mother or father or brother or sister or son or daughter or one or the other in various degrees of kinship, and when acquiring another form of life may live as a beast, as a domestic animal, as a bird, or as a womb-born, or as something standing in some relation to you. This being so, how can the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, who desires to approach all living beings as if they were himself, and to practice the Buddha truths, eat the flesh of any living being that is the same nature as himself? Even Mahamati, the Rakshasa, and this is a kind of a mythical or a beings that exist in Buddhism and the Hindu tradition that are like beasts with fangs and fur, and they're shapeshifters and they eat humans and stuff. It says even those kind of beings listen to the Tathagata's discourse on the highest essence of the Dharma, attain the notion of protecting Buddhism, and feeling pity refrain from eating flesh. How much more those who love the Dharma? Like, you say you love the Dharma, but beasts who hear the Dharma in their minds say, I probably shouldn't eat meat. The Buddha's making a point, obviously. Thus, Mahamati, wherever there is the evolution of living beings, let people cherish thought of kinship with them. So here, cherishing this thought, cherishing the kinship with all beings. All beings have been my mother. All beings, here it says, all beings have been my mother, have been my brother, have been my father, mother, brother, sister, son, daughter, one or the other, various degrees of kinship, cousins. It's like, talking about, or maybe they were the domestic animals or birds, or, the cow that you just ate, or the turkey you had for dinner this evening. Maybe that was your great grandmother. Did you like your great grandmother? Did you have a sense of kinship with her? Why did you not have a sense of kinship with your grandmother still? Great. Why don't you still have it? The Buddha is saying. Why are you eating her? The Mahamati, wherever there is the evolution of living beings, let people cherish the thought of kinship with them, and thinking that all beings are to be loved as they were an only child. So this is the relationship that it says that you have to all beings when you have this mind that's moist with love and compassion. When you have this beautiful mind, it says that you see them all as your only child, and that you would come upon each being after you realize the first step of realizing that sentient beings are your mother. You would come upon a worm and say, Mama. If you really realize these teachings, you would see someone difficult and say, Mama, you're suffering so greatly. First we grasp itself, and then we grasp at other. According to Dharmakirti, this kind of bifurcation, which creates attachment and aversion and so forth, is what causes all of our suffering. So if you look at all beings as a mother looks at your only child, it says you shouldn't eat meat. So with bodhisattvas whose nature is compassion, the eating of meat is to be avoided by him or her. Even in exceptional cases, it is not compassionate of a bodhisattva of good standing to eat meat. The flesh of a dog, an ass, a buffalo, a horse, a bull, or man, or any other being. Wow, that's powerful, right? The Buddha says, don't eat a person or a cow. Does that do something to your mind? Don't eat a chicken or a person. The Buddha's using that in the same sentence. Wow. We're so fortunate to have these teachings in our world, to know what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. We're saying, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. All sentient beings have been my mother. All sentient beings are my mother, because kindness yesterday is still kindness. Someone was kind to me. It says, or any other being, Mahamadi, that's not generally eaten by people. So, like, just because I didn't say like every being that could exist, just know I'm talking about like mind possessors that you could eat. Don't eat any of them. Uh, and it says Mahamadi. This is not generally. It says it's sold on the roadside as mutton for the sake of money, and therefore Mahamati, the Bodhisattva, should not eat meat. So this wasn't my like shot at people who don't eat meat this evening. It is Thanksgiving, and coincidentally, we're doing All Sentient Beings Are Our Mothers, and we look at Tsongkhapa's text, which quotes Arya Sangha, and then we find places where Arya Sangha might have gotten these ideas from. Now, it looks like that's quoted from something that is a little different. The Buddha was known to say a lot of similar things, but slightly different in different circumstances. But I just wanted to point that out to you, that whenever we're talking about, Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, we know that all of these teachings are from Lord Buddha. A lot of people will make Lord Buddha like the secretary, Geshe Dorje Damdula says, and put all of these ideas in front of Buddha Shakyamuni ahead of the teaching, and not be able to see that these are all teachings from Buddha Shakyamuni. This isn't something new. It's not a new discovery. It's what Buddha Shakyamuni taught. It just was lost, or was only taught to a few people secretly, because the world wasn't ready for it. So we look at things in this manner. So we looked at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and we see he points out a Sangha's level of yogic deeds. And we see that that's the quote that we're supposed to get bodhicitta from. I have difficulty seeing any person in the distant past who has not been your father, mother, aunt, uncle, da 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 da, etc. So just a quote like that, it's going to be really hard for someone like me, not someone with sharp capacity, but somebody like me, to then know how to get to love and compassion, how to get through over to extraordinary attitude, altruism, to get to bodhicitta. Really hard for someone like me. So we're going to move to the third Dalai Lama's text, Essence of Refined Gold. This is a commentary on Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. And the Dalai Lama gives a commentary on the third Dalai Lama's text. So let's look at what the third Dalai Lama has to say. The first cause. So we're in the first cause, recognizing all sentient beings are our mother. Because there is no findable beginning to sentient life and cyclic existence, one must have had an infinite number of previous lives, and all other beings must share this same situation. Thus it follows that there is no place in which we can say we have not taken birth, and there is no sentient being we can say has not been our parent. In fact, each and every sentient being has been our parent countless times. If we search throughout the endless round of birth, death, and rebirth, a being who has not been our mother will not be found. All sentient beings have shown kindness towards us equal to the kindness of our mothers of this life. Consequently, they should be seen as being only kind. So this is the cognitive change that we're trying to have take place. We've tried to change this discrimination of the three types of beings, friends, enemies, and neutrals, and tried to make them one type of being, a being that we would be willing to be open-minded about and willing to benefit. You'd be willing to equally, it's like one entity, beings you'd be willing to benefit and have an open mind about. And who fits into that entity? All sentient beings, without exception. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama now gives a commentary on that. The kindness of the mother is chosen as the example of the intensity of kindness to all beings, that is used as the example of the intensity of kindness that all beings have shown us. Because generally in samsara, the mother's concern is something very strong and obvious. We can see the kindness of a mother not only in humans, but in animals, birds, and so forth. A mother dog will starve herself to feed her pups and will die to protect them. In the same way, even if our mother were strange to us in some ways, she still would have instinctively and unconsciously shown us great kindness. All beings have loved us in this very same way, sacrificing their food for us and even dying to protect us because their love for us was so strong. The people who are our friends, enemies, and strangers to us in this life showed us the great kindness of a mother in countless previous lives. Actually, there is no imperative that mother love be the model used here if doing so could cause a problem. If we have serious problems in our relationship with our mother, or if we're orphans and an aunt or uncle brought us up, we could just say as easily, take whoever we feel has been most kind to us and use him or her as an alternative model in this step in meditation. We then contemplate all sentient beings have been born into this same relationship with us in countless previous lives and have shown us this same kindness. We have to learn to see all sentient beings in that person's image. As a result of this meditation, one gains a feeling of spontaneous familiarity with all other sentient beings, a recognition that they are somehow very close to us and very precious. So we're not trying to create attachment. We're not exaggerating now. We're just saying, hey, all of these beings have been kind to us. All of these beings are our mothers. We're not making an exaggerated point. We're not exaggerating that statement. That's a true statement. And how do we conclude such a thing? And now I think we have time. I'm psyched we have time. We do, to get into Pabonka Rinpoche's, I have to put these in order. So basically, we're going to work all the way through this first step, and we're going to take it deeper and deeper, and we're going to get to the point where we use Panchen Losang Yeshe's, the second Panchen Lama or fifth Panchen Lama, however you're using the counting. He's counted, and he's the successor of Panchen Lozan Chuji Jetsun, the first or fourth Panchen Lama, depending on how you're looking at it. And he creates a whole debate in the text, The Swift Path, with a syllogism and then opponents, and it's all about this one thing. So I think you'll really like that. But Pabonka Rinpoche's text uses extremely awesome reasoning. And when we first started class today, I said that if you don't establish previous lives, you can't engage in this meditation. Some will say, I argue that this isn't true. I guess you could do it. Some will say you can do equalizing, exchanging self with others practice without looking at previous or future lives. I guess you can look at those steps in such a way. But Pabonka Rinpoche and other Lamrim masters say that that encompasses all the steps of the 7-point cause and effect within it. The 7-point cause and effect does not encompass all the steps of the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice, but the equalizing and exchanging self with others practice encompasses all the points of the 7-point cause and effect. So you'll have to decide. You'll have to be the judge whether or not that's accurate or not. Okay, here we go. So the last one of the third Dalai Lama's, and the Dalai Lama's book was The Path to Enlightenment, translated by Glenn Mullen. So we're really fortunate to have his translations and so forth in this world. And he's done a lot of work with the Dalai Lama's stuff over the years, and the different Dalai Lamas. And we're fortunate that he's done the work that he's done for all of us. So I just wanted to give credit where credit's due. Path to Enlightenment, with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and the third Dalai Lama's Essence of Refined Gold is the text that you find in here. And then now we're going to Liberation in Our Hands. There's two translations of this book, Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, but Michael Richards' translation, big brown book. And then there's a 3-volume series by Artemis Engel, translated by Artemis Engel. That's an alternative translation. And they both have incredible merit in terms of the way they're translated. And I love both of them. Tonight we're using Art Engel's translation. Recognizing all sentient beings as our mother is the first topic in the 7-fold cause and effect instruction for training oneself in enlightened mind. It's also extremely difficult to generate a proper realization of this topic. However, if we don't, we also won't be able to generate a realization of any of the subsequent cause and effect elements of this instruction, such as recalling how kind our mothers have been to us. Therefore, we must strive especially hard to practice this first step. So we're seeing how you can't leave steps out. A lot of folks just want to jump to the highest teachings, and it's really self-deception, unfortunately. Without really recognizing these steps and realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment and understanding the object of negation of emptiness and understanding how we project things that do exist externally, though, and how those things could possibly subjectively exist but not objectively exist and not exist from their own side, without just making it a video game in our mind or making it like a dream. It is like a dream, but it's not a dream. It isn't something that isn't happening or that doesn't have rhyme or reason, or that can just, I could be in India one moment and then blink my eyes and be in here in the United States. A dream doesn't operate with cause and effect and karma and results in the same way that our normal experience does. So there's an unconventional dream that we're experiencing right now that's like a dream, but it's not a dream. It's an unconventional dream that's like a dream. Why is it like a dream? Because it appears as though it's actually happening. It appears to us as it's happening in a way that it isn't. A dream seems like it's happening and it's really happening to us, but it's all just coming from our mind. All of the things that we're experiencing in cyclic existence and are appearing to us as inherently existent are merely appearing that way and don't exist that way. They appear that way because of the cloud that we have. We have a veil over our eyes that doesn't allow us to see the true nature of things. So anyway, recognizing all sentient beings as our mothers, the first causal link is this instruction, means to realize that each of us is connected to all sentient beings by the most intimate of family relationships, that of being our mother. If we fail to develop a realization of this topic, we will lose whatever opportunity we have for generating the mind of enlightenment. That's pretty profound point that's being made there. If we can't figure out how to feel this sense of closeness to every being that exists in the universe, we'll never be able to generate the mind of enlightenment. And if we don't generate the mind of enlightenment, what did we say a couple of weeks ago? It's the entrance to the Mahayana path. And the Mahayana path is the only path that leads directly to Buddhahood. And we have to enter the Mahayana path to get to Buddhahood. So we say all paths lead to Buddhahood, even the lesser vehicle paths. But they lead to Buddhahood because you eventually join the Mahayana path, eventually enter the Mahayana path that leads to Buddhahood. The here and solitary realizer paths don't lead themselves without any addition to Buddhahood. So it says, and a sure and deeply felt understanding of the present topic is especially difficult to achieve if we just try to contemplate it by means of a scriptural citation alone, like the scriptural citation that I just gave you, that all beings have been this, that, and the other thing. Therefore, those persons of sharp faculties who are self-reliant in pursuing the Dharma must prove this point to themselves on the basis of reasoning. So if you're someone who is trying to, be sharp about this and really, really change your mind cognitively and not just approach this from faith, there's no other ways around it than to prove this point to yourself. So, however, it's still quite difficult to achieve a realization of this point, since there is only one argument that can be used, namely the one contained in the lines from the extensive treatise on knowledge. So that's on Dharmakirti's commentary on the Compendium of Valid Cognition. So Dharmakirti's commentary on Dignaga's text Valid Cognition, commentary on Valid Cognition, commentary on the Compendium of Valid Cognition. Dharmakirti's text is called the Pramanavartika Karika, and Dignaga's text is the Pramana Samuchaya. So the Pramanavartika Karika, classic stanza Rinpoche recited a million times. Whenever a being takes birth, his or her breath, faculties, and mind do not arise solely from the physical body, independent of other entities that are of the same kind. So non-like substances don't create the substances, so that didn't make sense. So if we look at what kind of substances cause consciousness, well, the substantial cause, direct cause of consciousness is consciousness, a previous moment's consciousness. There is not something different from consciousness of a dissimilar class, as it says next in the Dharmakirti text. There's not something from a dissimilar class that could be its substantial cause. So when we look at consciousness itself, we see that this moment's consciousness comes from a previous moment's consciousness. And then this is what Pabonka Rinpoche is going to make the point of. So here is the first part of the argument, which seeks to prove that a person's mind continuum has no beginning. Today's mind is a continuation of yesterday's mind. Okay, so we're going to start looking at, okay, so this is my mind. Okay, my mind. Okay, was this mind my mind yesterday? Well, it's not the same mind, because each moment concludes when another moment arises. But the continuum itself of cause and effect, when we took a look at temporal moments of the consciousness, the continuum of those temporal moments, we see is one entity, one continuum. So we say today's mind is a continuation of yesterday's mind, and yesterday's mind is a continuation of the mind from the day before yesterday. This chain can be traced all the way back to the mind that existed at the moment of a person's conception in his mother's womb. But the mind at that moment of conception must be the continuation of a mind that existed prior to the moment of conception. What is the immediately preceding substantial cause? Mind. Because the mind that becomes established in the womb at conception is part of a mind continuum that existed before the moment of conception in the womb. So we have to see 10 seconds ago, that was my mind. It's a continuum that's led me to this moment that just passed, and another moment of temporal moments that are extinguishing and arising, temporal moments that are occurring. And I thought yesterday, therefore I was, or, I thought yesterday. I had a mind yesterday. So that thing, which is defined, that which is clear and knowing, and luckily, like Dharmakirti says, it's naturally unsullied, free of the stains are adventitious. So it's this clear and knowing thing, and it's clear, unsullied, and all this messed upness in my mind is just adventitious. It's added. It can be removed. It can be distilled. It can be cooked out. The afflictive obstructions, the obstructions to omniscience, are not the nature of the mind. The nature of the mind is unsullied in the nature of clear light. So that knowing, clear knowing agent has to have come from a clear knowing agent, a like substance. We can't say that something unlike it created it. We can't say that something perfect created something imperfect. We can't say that anything other than a concordant cause could create this from a substantial causal standpoint. And And since samsara has no beginning, there is no event we can point to and say, this is when my mind first came into being. And here is the reasoning that allows you to meditate on this idea that all sentient beings are our mother, all sentient beings are our brother, our father, sister. In here, we find a longer bit of the quote from Art Engel's translation from the Yogacara Bhumi. It says, the essential nature of the levels. The Bodhisattva the Blessed One declared, when looking into the distant past, it's difficult for me to see. I cannot see that place where you have not taken birth, lived, and died. When looking into the distant past, it is difficult for me to see that person who has not been your father, mother, brother, sister, instructor, preceptor, spiritual master, or teacher. So it's saying not only, have you had all these relationships, you have been everywhere, so you've been there and done that. And it's all just been you being forced into a set of contaminated aggregates beyond your control. A lack of freedom is suffering, and it's all been driven by the mastermind of self-grasping ignorance. And what does that self-grasping ignorance give rise to? Contaminated karmas, afflictions, and their corresponding active seeds. And this is what we do for a life over and over again. And this is what we can learn about to stop. Because the mind has no beginning, it can be established that our births have no beginning. This allows us to establish that each of us has taken birth countless times and that our former lives are without limit. Just as we had a mother in this life, we also had a mother in each of those previous lives that was either a womb birth or a birth from egg. So it's giving the possibilities of mother that you can have, born from the womb and born from the egg. When we look at the 4 types of birth, miraculous birth, you don't have a mother. Birth from heat and moisture, not a mother. But when we look at birth from the egg and birth from the womb, you have a mother. And it's saying we had hundreds of mothers. It says and just as we had one mother for each of those lives, we had 100 mothers when we took birth that way 100 times, and 1,000 mothers when we took birth that way 1,000 times. Therefore, since we have had an infinite number of such mothers, it's impossible that all sentient beings have not been our mothers. Now you might find yourself thinking this: I agree that I must have had many different mothers, but it can't be true that all sentient beings have been my mother, because the number of sentient beings is infinite. And we're going to find out that we've had more lives than there are beings. Now you might find yourself thinking that, however, it isn't just in a general sense that our rebirths represent such a large number. We have taken birth as each of the countless species of sentient beings that there are, including all wild animals such as deer and mountain goats, as well as all the various kinds of worms, insects, and the like. In addition, we have taken birth countless times as each of these countless species. Therefore, the number of births we have taken is much greater than the number of sentient beings that there are. And since we must have had the same number of mothers as we did births, not only have all sentient beings been our mothers, we would not have been able to find enough mothers unless each of them had been our mothers a great many times. And I'll end there. And I thought it's something interesting. So if you can first establish, okay, you're starting this meditation, all sentient beings are your mothers. And when you do the meditation, when you move from equanimity, you start with neutrals and then move to friends and then enemies. And when you do this meditation, you start with friends, move to neutrals, and you move to enemies. And you start with the person who's closest to you. In this case, all sentient beings are your mother, but all sentient beings are, fill in that blank, whoever you need to make this affect your mind. That's what the most important thing is. You start with that person that you feel so close to, and you establish this fact that they've been your mother, and then you actually increase it, because you then recognize that they were your mother previously and showed you this kindness. So you're starting with this really convincing, way that you would become attracted later to be able to develop this love, if that makes any sense. It's big. And then if you can establish it in this way, then you can start to move and expand your circle to make it broader and broader. And once you've done this, your mind is bathing in this idea so much that you've bathed in this idea of this non-biased attitude, and you know about the uncertainty of cyclic existence. When you look at the six sufferings in the medium scope, you have bathed in these ideas. So by the time you get to these difficult people, you've bathed so much, it doesn't even like what difficult people, it becomes more and more like, oh, someone who kind of rubs me a little bit wrong. It's no longer like an arch rival. If you do these meditations, you no longer have arch rivals. Anyway, I hope this stuff affects your mind, and I hope that you can apply it in your daily lives. If you don't, it will just be more information that you know. It will leave imprints in your mind that you'll connect later to the teachings. But I don't know about you. When I meditate on the 8 sufferings, 6 sufferings, 3 sufferings, and I look at my friends and everyone around me and know that they have to experience those things too over and over and over again, and it won't end unless they apply an antidote. This mind will be perpetually in cyclic existence until there's an opposing force that counteracts that continuation. It will continue to go on. Samsara will go on with no end until there's a counteracting force. But samsara has an end. You can use the truth of path. You can have a counteracting force that can stop samsara. The wisdom realizing emptiness serves as an antidote to the origin of suffering. The origin of suffering at its root is the self-grasping ignorance. And when we look at real renunciation, we're trying to renounce that self-grasping ignorance, grasping at things to be inherently existent, not merely imputed in dependence upon a collection that serves as the basis of designation. We feel that they independently exist inherently from their own side, independent of a designating consciousness. But when we look closely at everything in reality, we see that they're merely imputed independence upon a collection that serves as a basis of designation, and there's nothing found from the side of the object that we think is there. And when we start to find out that these things are not, that the way we think doesn't tally with reality, we can start to undo that wrong thinking that causes us all of our pain. And we start to undo this idea that all sentient beings aren't beings that we should look at like a mother looks at her dear child. If we can't, we have to change the way that we misinterpret everything around us, misinterpret the beings around us, and at that gross conventional level, but misinterpret at the level of ultimate analysis the mode of existence of everything. So I hope that made sense. I appreciate all of you, and we'll see week after week if we can affect our minds, and if these things are working, then we should be able to handle situations better. If we're still exploding, or we can't handle an interaction at the bank, or somebody who cuts us off in traffic, if at that gross level we can't stop from yelling or chasing them in a car, how could we ever expect to have the mindfulness and the introspection related to our mental behavior if we can't fix our physical behavior? And if our physical actions aren't modifying through as a result of these teachings, I'm telling you, maybe try something different. Outer mandala offering. The fundamental ground is scented with incense, and concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. Thank you so much for listening. Let's send a perfect universe to the teacher and all of the lineage chasing back to Buddha Shakyamuni that was so kind to be able to present these teachings and drop them in our laps and spoon feed us. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, in particular, the essential teachings of Venerable Ozan Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Any mistakes that I've made, I apologize. May they be purified by this mantra. Om benzo sato samaya manupalaya benzo sato zainabaji jadida meva zudagaya meva zubagaya meva anaraja meva vazavazadi meva rajazawa kamaziji megi jamshi guru ma bhagavanza vatata kata benzo mame moka benzo papa mahasamaya safa ahom ve. It's so incredible to see the far reach of Namgyal Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche. I see two people on now, if David's still on, and Tan Bumbang, who are all students of Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche. And one is in the United States, and the other met Rinpoche in Malaysia. And I just find that to be so incredible that Khenser Rinpoche's blessings, and Geshe Lobsang Gompo Rinpoche's blessings, and Khenser Lobsang Gyatso's blessings, and all the blessings of Goel Compson we've been able to receive. We're so fortunate. So yeah, thank you so much. And may we always be protected by Palden Lama. We know Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche told us that Palden Lama is our protector deity. So may we always be protected. Jo Rama, Jo Rama, Jojo Rama, Junjo Gala Rajamo, Ramo Waja Daja, Dunjo Rula Rula Hong Jo Hong. And protected from what? Protected from self-grasping ignorance, protected from the self-cherishing attitude. Because if we're protected from that, we won't ever in the future have to suffer again. We won't ever have to experience a kind of a happiness that changes into suffering again and again and again. We'll be able to, in dependence upon that kind of protection, really achieve a freedom from fear, a freedom from sickness, a freedom from all of those things. Because we'll get them, if we have self-grasping ignorance, we're going to become sick again. We're going to have problems again, for the most part, unless we're Arya beings that still have kind of subtle self-grasping ignorance and don't get sick or something, you know. But really, everything that we want is right here. We just have to take it. Really, that's all that we have to do. So now we'll do the rest of the dedications, and we'll read Rinpoche's prayer. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors tourists three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has risen not diminish but increase forevermore. Long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. In the heavenly realm of Tibet, surrounded by a chain of snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and help for beings. All powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And then a long prayer of supplication to Namgyal Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche to beg him to please come back into our world, share the Dharma with us. Let's also think about the other holy beings who've left our world. May they come back swiftly. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Chungla Rato Rinpoche, Jeffrey Hopkins, all of these holy beings, may they swiftly come back. Khenser Lobsang Gyatso Rinpoche, Geshe Lobsang Gompo Rinpoche, all of these holy beings, may they come and teach the truth of suchness and help us to get rid of the self-cherishing attitude that gives rise to our sufferings that keep us from having perfect happiness. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. This is to Namgyal Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, and this was written by me. Homage to Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend, who is inseparable from Arya Tara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om Ah Om, Om Ah Om, Om Ah Om. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you. Place the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of three capacities. Now that sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood that sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood. Without your continued guidance, the sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of all of us and all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope these teachings are meaningful to you. It's so beneficial for me to keep, being able to give them to you week after week. And if your mind is a little bit like mine, maybe they'll help your mind like they've helped mine. Thanks a lot, and I hope your mind is virtuous this week.